So guys, I've spent a lot of time in the last 2 weeks hiking up in the mountains up here in the forest behind my home, and I decided to take today and use it as a homesteading day. As you can see, I've got some wood I need to split up. It's already mostly split. These were some big logs, big rounds that I've quartered already. Let dry for about 8 months, but now I need to cut them down into eighths so they'll burn more efficiently. But I figured while I'm doing this, I would tell you a story about something that happened this week while I was out gallivanting around in the potential Bigfoot Sasquatch forest up here on top of the mountains in the woods behind my home. I know I don't need to ask you to get my 6 because I know you've already got it. And you know, a lot of folks always say in the comments, if I lived where you would, I wouldn't go out there without protection. Well, didn't you see what I brought out here? I mean, I'm not anticipating him, her, it, or they to show up, but as we know, that's his, her, it, or theirs choice when they decide to do that, not mine. So I have taken to always carrying my field kit with me, my field research kit, Bigfoot Sasquatch kit here. So I've got my protection while I'm out here splitting wood in a place that has been very active in the past. But with all this said, now that I've let you know what's going on, what I'm doing and why, I want to tell you this. I want to share a story with you, and it's because I don't always record every time I do go out here in the forest. Pay very close attention to that bird. Pay very close attention to everything around us. I don't always record every time I go out. I will intentionally leave my cameras at home on time. Sometimes when I want to go up there, look around, see if I see or hear anything odd, feel anything odd, I will intentionally leave my cameras at home so I'm not tempted to maybe record something that maybe it is my imagination playing tricks on me. I want to be as unbiased in my research as possible. So I take my research kit with me, sure, and I take my water, my provisions, proper gear. You know, it's been right at freezing all week this week while I've been out here doing this up in the mountains. So I don't record everything. Sometimes I will record footage and then I'll very discerningly go through it once I get home, and I don't upload it to YouTube. You know, I shoot for two videos a week, sometimes 3, and a lot of times you know, the vertically challenged individuals who live under bridges is what I like to call them, so that I don't hurt their feelings. Oh, OMG, do you like put your whole life on here? No, I don't. I don't even put not even 70% of the research I do out in the field on here, okay? So one day this week, and yes, I've finally come around to it here. This is the story I'm about to tell you. One day this week, I actually wish I had my camera, because I ran into 2 ladies. Now look, these mountains behind me, these are the Blue Ridge Mountains. They go forever. You know, the Appalachian Trail runs across the top of them here, and that stretches from Maine down to Georgia. I forget how long it is. I know there are hikers that will do that whole trail. They'll do it, some of them at one time, and it takes them 3 or 4 months. And here's a little FYI for you. A lot of folks don't know this, but the Appalachian Trail actually continues past Maine, underneath the Atlantic Ocean, and pops back up. Not the Appalachian Trail, but the Appalachian Mountain Chain. Pops back up in England. So anyway, I was coming out of a trail earlier in the week because a lot of this mountaintop is accessible publicly by trails maintained by the DNR, the state. Some of it's federal property. Some of the trails you can ride horses on, okay? So there's all kinds of ways to get to the top of the Blue Ridge Mountain. You don't have to just walk through my backyard. Skyline Drive's up there, beautiful road if you've never driven on that. People come from not just all over the country, but from all over the world to drive across the Skyline Drive. Our personal favorite time of year to do it is in the fall when the leaves are all different colors. You notice it just got eerily silent? Even the wind stopped. And it's been windy as the dickens the last few days. Give me just a second. Watch my 6. Let me split take this axe and hit it a lick or two. You keep looking back there. You can't see her, but my cat Cleopatra is about 30 yards in front of me, staring straight into the forest behind me, and she looks like she's afraid to come over here. And it's not because I'm splitting wood. She'll come over here at times while I am splitting wood, and I have to shoo her out of my way so I don't hurt her. So it's not me and it's not the wood. So as I continue to tell you this tale, look directly back there. Looks like due 6 o'clock. So earlier this week, one of the days in which I did not take my cameras into the forest with me, and there was a point to that, and this is it. I was coming out of a trail that was horseback accessible. Ran into a couple of ladies who were riding horses up the trail. They didn't see me coming down the trail. It was at a place where the trail kind of zigzagged back and forth several times because it was a very steep hill. So it went up steep, zigzagged back at a 45-degree angle, about 40 yards, zigzagged back 40 yards. Well, the horses saw me when I was a couple zigzags up. And so the horses stopped. And the women were trying to get them to go forward, and they wouldn't move. Well, then when the women finally saw me coming around with my inside out orange cap on, one of the ladies said, "Oh, okay, we didn't see you, but the horses did." I said, "Oh, what did I scare them?" They said, "Well, yeah, they stopped. They didn't want to go forward, but it's okay." So I stood there and I talked to these ladies for just a few minutes. Well, what I thought would be a few minutes. Ended up having about a 10-minute conversation with them. And because they were talking about how they go up this trail miles up into the Blue Ridge, and I've been where they were going on the horses that day. They told me that there's been several times when they'd get up there and their horses would do the same thing. They'd just freeze up and they wouldn't move in any direction. The ladies couldn't urge them on, couldn't move them forward. And they said that at times they would see a bear scurry away, run up the mountaintop that they'd never seen, never saw it. And if it hadn't been for the horse stopping and staring in that direction, they would have never seen the bear. But only because the horse was looking that way and refused to move, they were looking to see what the horse might be scared of. That's why they saw the bears. And I said, well, yeah, you know, I've spent a lifetime in the woods, and with this wildlife or anything else that's out there, if they don't want you to see them, you're not going to. They're just going to stand there. You'd be amazed how close you might pass some of this wildlife, be it a bear, be it, depends on where you live. Out west, a mountain lion. Here on the East Coast, deer, bobcats. Bobcats everywhere around here, and 90% plus of the people who spend a regular amount of time in the forest will never see one in their lifetime. They blend in with the foliage on the ground, the brown leaves. If they don't move, you won't see them. I've only seen 2 in my lifetime. There's one around here I hear screaming at night in the summers. So anyway, the women then went on to tell me that there's been several times when they've been up there riding their horses, and the horses will freeze up and they'll stop and at times tremble. They can feel them trembling in fear. And I asked them, well, what was it, another bear? And they say, we don't know. So we look and we look, and it's not that they were in clearings, but for instance like this, winter. We have a deciduous hardwood forest around us. The leaves fall off. Everything's brown and gray. It's still pretty thick back there, but if something large moves through pretty much any area within sight, you can see it. You'll detect it by its motion. These ladies told me that they did not detect any motion. They did not see or hear anything, but just all of a sudden, their horses weren't scared anymore and they moved on. Now, they told me several instances in which this happened. And I have been getting to know these mountaintops and every hollow, as you would say if you're not from Appalachia or the South, in between these mountains very, very well. And so I've been through here. I asked these ladies, where can you remember particularly which trail? Because some of these trails have names. Which trails, how far up, which trails? They named a couple. They named the proximity on the trail where they were when this happened. I've been there and those places are creepy. Some of those places we do have on film. We have in past videos. So this kind of made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I could feel my skin crawling just a little bit. So I said to the ladies, I said, you think maybe your horses are seeing Bigfoot? And they started laughing so hard, they almost fell off the backs of their horses. And now, for some reason, the wind is picking up quite harshly. And all of you watching this video are witnessing this, okay? I can't control the wind. I think him, her, it, or they didn't like hearing that they've been laughed at. So anyway, the women laughed and they laughed. And I thought, well, you're probably gonna look like a kook and scare these ladies. Here you are out in the middle of the woods. Maybe you should get off this Bigfoot thing. So then I said, do you think maybe your horses are seeing ghosts? Well, then they laughed just as hard. Waiting to see if we get a response. So anyway, I told them, and guys, this is true, and this isn't just true here in the Blue Ridge. This is probably true pretty much anywhere in the world that has been populated for any amount of time. I told them, I said, there are graves all over these woods, all over these mountains. Some of them are marked, some of them aren't. Some of them that are not were intentionally not marked. And they're looking at me like, you know, we've seen some strange rock piles. And they went on to describe a certain area where I visited recently and where you visited by way of video. I've been there and it's creepy. And I asked them, did your horses have any response in this area? And they said, yeah. Actually, that place stands out so strongly in our minds because we were only there once. Our horses freaked out, refused to go past where these rock piles were, strange rock formations, and we never went back. So they were there one time, a place I've gone several times, and I was close to that location when I was talking to these ladies. It was several miles away, about an hour and a half's hike, but we're talking about the same spot. Well, then I told them about how I've found actual graveyards out there. One was in a recent video that we did record and put on YouTube where they had the head and the feet. Guys, a good way to tell is there'll be a larger stone marking the head, and then there'll be a smaller stone marking the feet, and they're always going east to west. And this is a Western concept. When we bury our dead in the West, we want those who have passed on to be able to see the sunrise and the sunset, even in the afterlife. So the graves are facing east to west, and you'll generally see an indentation in the earth in between the stones, okay? From where, as the cadavers dissolve and go back to dust and earth, the ground kind of soups down. They're everywhere. I have found these out. And now listen, I mean, this is just some history here. They give, you know, Jamestown, which is just a few hundred miles from here, was settled in 1604. Okay, but Christopher Columbus allegedly came here in 1492, and even more allegedly than that, the Vikings were here 1,000 years before that. Now, these are Western travelers. Think about the indigenous people. I have researched this area. There were indigenous people living right here 14,000 years ago. That's a long time. We're still digging up here on this property. We've dug up grape shot from Civil War cannons 170 years ago. Multiply that by almost 100, okay? That's how much 14,000 years ago is. So there's been so many people, so many things happen here. It's hard to tell what's happened where we are and just how many where we trample. There may be, you know, perhaps 5,000 years ago that was a burial site, or maybe someone was done away with and they were hidden at that spot. It's happened. I've talked to old timers who have long gone, who told me stories about the old timber days in these mountains, about how men would just spend months and months and months alone out in the woods by themselves. The only companionship they had was their dog, and if a traveling preacher came through and the dog came at him and they kicked the dog, they'd kill the preacher and they'd make sure that body was never found. And those spots are just out there in the middle of nowhere, all over the world, not just the Blue Ridge in the US, but all over the world. So anyway, me and these ladies talked about this kind of stuff, and they weren't nervous when we finished this conversation. They weren't, I wouldn't even call it unsettled. I could tell that when we were done talking that they had paid attention, and they seemed somewhat hesitant to take their horses and go up that trail. But I lightened up a little bit and started joking around and started talking about UVA basketball. You know, we're here at the end of regular season here as they're recording this video. We agreed we're hoping we go to the tournament, have a strong showing, and who knows, maybe win another national championship. So they left lighthearted. I left lighthearted. But all of us, the two of them and myself, left knowing that with maybe not agreeing on what it was exactly we've seen or felt in those hills, we have seen and felt the same thing. We just don't necessarily know what that same thing is or was. But I'm determined to find out. And I thank each and every single one of you who come along with me for every journey to help me find out. We'll find out together. You keep getting my 6, and I'm going to keep splitting up some of this firewood.